Welcome to the Cybersecurity Matters podcast. Your hosts today are me, Harry Baldwin, and Matt Rose, two members of the cyber team here at neuco. And we're delighted to be joined today by Liav Caspi, co-founder and CTO of Legit Security. Liav began his career in Israel's elite cyber intelligence unit before moving into senior technical roles at Argus Security and Checkmarks, one of the pioneers in application security testing. He went on to co-found Legit Security, where he now leads the company's technology vision, helping large enterprises secure modern software development pipelines and manage application risk across increasingly complex environments. In this episode, we explore how application security is evolving, the rise of AI-generated code, and why securing software at the very start of the development lifecycle has never been more important. Welcome to the show, Liav. Great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, also really looking forward to diving into all things you, the industry, your career so far. But to get things started, we always start with the same question, which is how did you first get into the cybersecurity industry?
Yeah, so you briefly mentioned it as you described my previous roles. So I did what every young 18-year-old person in Israel does is you have to do your military service. And I ended up in cybersecurity back then. So I was learning computer science before, and this is what I majored in high school, and then a little bit of courses outside. And again, I wasn't a computer wizard, but it was enough to get me into a path in let's call like the Department of Defense, in which I saw state-sponsored cybersecurity, whether it's from the red side or the blue side. But this got me really into understanding the core concepts. And also, I would say Israel is, again, very technologically advanced country, but not very rich in terms of resources. So in the military, you have to come up with solutions as very young, like 18, 19 years of age. You have to come up with solutions to problems with very little resources. So I think this develops not just for myself, but in a lot of young people, a type of thinking, especially around cybersecurity, but in technology generally, that helps them then become entrepreneurs and use this kind of thinking to solve real life problems.
Yeah, no, interesting. Is that the classical route into cybersecurity then in Israel, or do they also have lots of colleges and universities which offer cybersecurity education, or is the primary way still through military or intelligence?
I don't have the statistics, but my gut is that this is the primary way because most of the founders and many of the people I know that work in either as an engineers or cybersecurity experts in the ecosystem in Israel come out from the defense sector. So their first role is either in the military, Department of Defense, any of the compulsory service they have to do for the country. This is where they get their understanding of cyber rather than in university.
Great, fantastic. Well, look, I'm going to hand over to Matt now, who's got some questions about your career. So yeah, over to you, Matt.
Thanks, Harry. And with your transition from that military background into the kind of private sector, keen to understand a little bit more about if there's something or someone who in that journey has kind of stood out as being one of the biggest influences on your career.
So this is a tough question. I'll also, sorry for using my previous answer. I think the military service was the biggest influence. I've been there for longer than usual. I was about 10 years in various roles. I will manage teams, manage projects. I think my experience there gave me a lot of perspective, understanding, or skills that I'm using to this day. I would say the biggest one that I learned, I really like personally to understand how stuff works. I'm not personally quiet until I really understand how things work. So even as a kid, I wanted to understand how all the technology around me works. And I think the lamp or the light bulb lit for me during the service, where I realized that I have this end-to-end kind of like understanding of, going from the bare metals and the physics into how eventually all this amazing technology, which is, today, whether it's networking or AI or all of this is working. And I understood, I had this feeling that everything is possible. But once you understand how things work and you need to come up with a problem, you suddenly have the feeling that, okay, I know how to start solving it. So I think this has been the biggest influence. Again, being challenged with very hard problems, with only whatever every person in the world has, a computer and access to the internet, and go solve this.
And you mentioned that feeling of anything being achievable. Really curious to kind of hear to date what's the thing that you're most proud of in your career so far?
So obviously, my career besides the military service is in Legit. We're now 5 years in business. I had a small tenure in a company called Argus that is still doing cybersecurity for automotive. But besides that, I think Legit, I'm proud of the company, the path we've done so far, and the impact that we've done with our product. I guess what I'm most proud of is that there are some real problems that we solve. And I think this is the most amazing feeling. So you can build a lot of cool things. And this is a realization that a lot of people have when they try to go into the public sector and start building products, is that you can do a lot of cool stuff, but there's somebody really need it. And I think the feeling when somebody pays for it for the first time is like, oh, amazing, I'm building something of value. So we're really proud of what we've done so far. And also the way we've been able to transform, because since we started in 2021, the world has changed multiple times, especially now. And when we get to that, our product is especially in the domain of software development, and software development changed multiple times now to the point where you can say it's not people that build software today anymore. So the ability to change the technology to adapt was a huge challenge.
And originally, what led to the creation of Legit Security? And you mentioned that obviously the context around software development has changed quite a lot since then. But has the original vision behind it stayed the same, or have you also changed that too?
It didn't change much. And so before Legit, we spent time in a company called Checkmarks that still to this date is a software security, application security company. And this is where we got, me and also I have two other co-founders, really deep into application security. And we realized that when an organization is big, it's not 10 people in a garage, it's hundreds of engineers. It is extremely hard to get something out of the gate which is secure. And security was, so there was kind of a catch-22 situation that we realized that either you, as an organization, say, okay, I don't care, let's roll out stuff and handle the consequences. And then you're playing a dangerous game. At some point, something's going to happen and will backfire. People will get fired. It's going to be, depending on the company. So you can gamble your product and say, I want to move fast. Or you can try to implement security at every step of development, but this takes a huge toll on developers and it frustrates them. It slows down processes. So it was like there was no win situation from what we saw. It was either you're criminally negligent and say, okay, I'll build everything, or developers are miserable. And this is the core thing we wanted to solve. I wanted to say we can solve this and help organization really do something secure without all the toil associated with it. And just to give an example of the problem is that as a developer, and I was a developer in my background as well, you just want to build stuff. And then security comes along and say, we've got this finding. and we think it's dangerous, and you're saying, okay, this will require me to change my architecture and work for another 4 weeks. Are you sure you want to do this? And then also security is at a catch-22, because if they say, oh no, forget about it, let's just roll out, they're now accountable for something that's dangerous. And if they tell you, hey, stop and fix it, then now they've delayed the project. And this is a lose-lose situation. We either delay or we take responsibility. Like, the reason is that most likely 99% chances that this vulnerability is really not important to solve, but nobody knows that. So if you have that proof, for example, can really solve this scenario, but this happened constantly everywhere. So our vision hasn't changed, although we rephrased it a little bit along the years, is we want developers to move as fast as possible and security to be seamless. So we want security just to be baked in without the toil it takes on engineering.
And you mentioned a little bit there about on the personal note, you being from a background of software development too, but keen to kind of hear how your role personally has changed from those days to now being, CTO and co-founder, and how your role has evolved as the company has grown alongside that too.
Yeah, so obviously I wrote a few lines of code when we launched the company, but it was also at a stage that my previous role at Checkmarks was leading the product team. So at some point in my career, I stopped writing much code and started more focusing on architecture and how the product should look like. This is also the area I most enjoy, like making this connection between the technology and the product. I'm also leading today in Legit the product management org. And so I engineered a little bit in the beginning and wrote some code. At some point, I was just managing the product and got further away from the actual implementation. But I'm now doing a little bit of a comeback because of AI. So I'm able to make changes that are very fast, just leveraging AI tools, and it's actually going pretty great.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, and almost keen to hear, from being so hands-on originally to now almost coming back to being hands-on. How have you ensured, as kind of CTO, that perspective, now managing teams, is kind of felt elsewhere alongside the business too?
Yeah, it's so. I guess the team matters, obviously. So to bring the right core team with people that you trust, and you let them handle all the dirty things and all the how the architecture works. I also really a strong believer in as well, my other co-founders, that development infrastructure, whatever you call it, development infrastructure, DevOps, platform, is super important for a software company. It's better to invest in that more, in how you build things, how you get quality, how you test it for security. So the better your engineering platform is, the faster you can go and with higher confidence. So I think a lot of my role has been mostly concerned with product. Can we get something out with the right quality? And I was sort of like the gatekeeper at the end, looking at the output and giving feedback to people. That's been the summary of my role. But most of my concern has been, is this machine effective, and can we make it better?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I appreciate all your answers, Liav. I think it's interesting hearing how you've kind of grown with Legit Security, but also how the industry's changed over time as well. And looking forward to covering that in our topic that matters. Super quickly on talent, right? And I think it's interesting. We've more recently been doing heaps and heaps of work in application security, DevSecOps, and some of the new kind of niches within the application security space. And we know how difficult it is, right, to find people who have that understanding, but then also have those startup skills as well. First of all, how have you found hiring in security more generally? and what are the challenges that you see? Are they specific to application security or the niche that you guys operate in ASPM? Yeah, what challenges do you see?
So the bottom line is extremely challenging. I think application security also requires combination of both some cybersecurity knowledge, but also it's very focused on development and code. And there's a list of acronym and terms that, again, if you want to engage in application security, let's say as a product manager or as a sales engineer, product marketing, either of those roles, you have to really understand it. So you can't not have understanding of how engineering work, or what is a CI/CD, or what is a cloud environment look like, and what is some concept like a Git or Kubernetes. And we've been having difficulties finding these combination of the two. So often we have to compromise on either. So either just bring somebody with a development background and teach them cybersecurity, or vice versa. On engineering, I would just say we have been a little bit more easy on the cybersecurity requirements, but we really wanted engineers. The first priority was the hungry, talented. As still as a startup, we're looking for people that can take a task end to end with multiple skills, not just specification in one piece of technology, can learn new. So I think this compensates for lack of understanding cybersecurity because they can learn it fast. But on other roles, again, it's extremely difficult.
Yeah, and do you see AI impacting the kind of profiles that you look for? Is that a skill that you're looking for? AI and large language model experience, is that something that you look for in engineers that you hire today, or in people working at commercial people working at companies where there is a bit of an AI cell involved in it, or are you not quite there yet when it comes to talent and recruitment on that side?
Oh, absolutely, the former. Where I believe every role right now, if you're not at some level of fluency with AI tools, then you're going to get left behind, not just from the hiring perspective. So the expectations from product managers, developers, even sellers is to use the tools. I think we're in a point in time in humanity or in the industry where there's not a lot of infrastructure to use those tools. So it's, I'm afraid to say, it's like every man for himself. Everybody builds his own personal castles with AI and his own projects and profiles and skills. As a company, we are, I would put us a little bit above average in building those infrastructure for the employees and giving them tools to utilize AI with some company created plugins and skills and infrastructure. But it's still today, what I'm seeing is that people are personally getting advantage if they invest in it personally. And I'm looking for those people that didn't just wait for their organization to provide them, that they've done their own research and they're using AI everywhere in work to boost their work. And I think it also tells something about the individual.
Yeah, absolutely. We see it when we're helping people prepare for presentations and panels and research, and it can definitely be your friend when it comes to research for sure. You've been in application security for quite some time now. It has shifted massively, or at least it has from our perspective. For someone today, what advice would you give someone who's looking to work in application security specifically? What are some of the things they can do to be successful?
So I believe, again, depend on the role, but looking generally from the security perspective, AppSec engineer, or those roles that are on the security team side, I see application security as coupled with software development. So the successful application security teams that I've seen really understand software development. They understand how that works. They understand they can read source code and understand problems. So now, as software engineering have changed tremendously with AI and how agents play a role in that, I believe this is where application security people should put their focus on. Like, how is engineering? What does engineering look like? How is software built today? This is, if you get proficiency in how software is built, and the more you understand, the better you become in start thinking about the threat model of that and how do we secure that. So that's always been the weakest spot. I've seen a lot of people in application security that have little understanding of software, and that also impacted their ability to do their job.
Yeah, no, interesting, and I think it's great advice for anyone listening looking to get into that industry, and it's interesting to hear, yeah, your take on that. On to our topic that matters, which is application security on a whole, right, and some of the more modern practices. I'm curious to see. Obviously, you worked previously at Checkmarx. There are quite a few legacy players in the space. You know, Checkmarx, Veracode, Black Duck and Synopsys, right? You know, some of these bigger, broader players. How, out of curiosity, right? How do you see them adapting to some of the newer changes in the industry? Do you feel like they're in a good position to respond to those, or do you think that, you know, businesses like Legit, which are a little bit smaller, a little bit more agile, are in a better place to deal with some of the more modern day challenges?
Yeah. So eventually I don't know, because again, the world is changing very fast. But there's a couple of points on that. One is that obviously smaller players are more agile. And I think that where we are today, agility is very important because the world changes. As an example, we were having conversations about securing coding agents. And this is part of the value that we do in Legit. And we've been having conversation around just before the end of 25, around end of November, December. And a lot of organizations told us it's very early, we'll roll it out during 26. But then when we touched base back on January, everyone was using either Cursor or Cloud Code across the org. And they said, we just had to do it. And the rate of change with AI, I think, is unprecedented. So I believe in this period of time, the implications are, first, is that businesses need to move fast as well. Otherwise, somebody else will move faster than you and capture new needs. And obviously, legacy companies or large organizations with established product lines that are selling to enterprises have harder time to change the course of the ship. On the other hand, which is also working against companies like Checkmarx, AI makes it cheaper and faster to close gaps with feature set they usually had as a moat. One of the things that I give as an example, the world of code scanning, for example, has been a technical moat for many organizations because they used an army of analysts and people across the globe to write pattern-based rules for many code scenarios. And you're getting 80-90% quality if you just ask an AI on the code what the code does. So there is AI is really disrupting a lot of the code-based detection and a lot of the things, and also helps smaller organizations deliver things that were considered in the past enterprise grade. And so there was the barrier to enter the market just became lower, not because the barrier by itself lower, it's easier to get it because of AI. So I think, again, whoever moves fast in this period of time is going to grab more land and more success, but AI makes it also easier to compete with the large companies.
Yeah, there's been lots of chat about Claude and code security and the impact that's going to have on the space. I saw George Kurtz at CrowdStrike was talking about it recently. Are you seeing a big impact from the Anthropic's Claude more specifically? And I know it's difficult to say because it's constantly changing. But is it something that you think is going to negatively impact some of these DevSecOps businesses, or is it just about how fast you can move to keep up with change, as you just said?
So about the security, and I'm not sure if that's what you meant, so let me know if it answers the question, but
Yeah.
about the cloud security, I think the biggest gap with these technologies is, I would call it the orchestration. So it's cool that you have this /security command. How do I run it as a security team across all my code bases regularly, take the results and fix them? So it's nice that the developer has the option, but there is still, and there's many words to describe it, like operationalization or orchestration, but there's still a gap on how to harness this component. So I guess it will take some time. I don't know what Claude is having up their sleeve, but it's not as super easy to orchestrate AI agents today in a consistent and meaningful way. And this is the challenge I see that other companies like Legit are now shifting to. There is no doubt in my mind, and I think across the industry, that AI is superior understanding code than the old rule-based regular expression approach. It's just how can we do it orchestrated consistently for an organization? So I would love to use the cloud security tool as an engine in the platform. And I also think the hype was too early because there's so many challenges yet to solve. They might get solved this year, but it's very costly. It costs a lot. The consistency of the problem, Claude needs to know context, so you have to somehow tell him about the project. So there's some challenges. I have no doubt we'll solve them, but I still see a gap about how do you take this capability and orchestrate it across an organization. That's a challenge.
Yeah, interesting. And then really keen to cover application security posture management because that feels like a fairly new space. I know that's a big part of your work today. Tell us what ASPM actually means in practice.
Yeah. ASPM, application security posture management. Actually, if you make a survey, you would get probably many different answers because it's not a well-defined category. Excuse me. The way we define it, and I would believe the majority of the market looks at this way, is a single pane of glass for application risk. It doesn't say whether you're actually finding the risk or you're pulling it from somebody else's. But I think the number one requirement is just show me what is my risk to my application. I want to see one dashboard that clearly describes if I have an application. And an application is also an elusive concept. It's not a code repository. It's my mobile app or my website. But I want to see my application and I want a really clear understanding of its risk. And it hides a lot of challenges, like defining what an application is, collecting all its risk and normalizing it, being able to also speak about it in a meaningful way that's not super technical. So how do I count my risks? How do I know what's critical and what's really nice to fix? So that's the core value of ASPM, is just to get you this understanding of your risk. So it's a basis to take action. And what we are now working, so that's also what Legit Security does, obviously, and our core product. But two changes that we have done right now, which I also believe every other ASPM company would go through and evolve into. One is we start engaging more with agents. So this whole data that I described is start to get consumed by AI agents rather than humans. So how do we take this information to Claude and use it to fix the problems?
Yeah.
So how do we create this workflow working in an organization? And we start to call it like agentic AppSec, or again, there's no name the market is given this yet, but we are seeing an emergence of a field which says, okay, let's take it to the next level, create an automated system that basically fixes every new vulnerability. I don't really need to look at the dashboard. I just need to understand if my automated agents are healthy and are doing what they need to do. That's where I think this is going. And the second change is we went into protecting those agents. So we thought, building application is about, creating a safe app. The biggest risk we're seeing right now is from Claude itself, consuming data that's malicious or doing things that you didn't intend to. And we have also made a lot of innovation in the domain of securing agentic development. So making sure the developer has, in a metaphor, a seatbelt when they use those tools.
Yeah, No, very interesting. And I know you don't have a crystal ball, Liav, but where do you see application security evolving in, in 5 to 10 years? I know we've talked about it a little bit, but what kind of risks, what other risks, what kind of advantages do you think it'll have? I think AI will have as an impact on application security, but also, yeah, how do you see the application security space continuing to evolve in 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think even 5 years is too much to predict because again, the rate of change is amazing. But quick things I'll mention is that one, code is becoming less and less important. I've even heard statement from people that says we can make AI just write the binary. We don't need the source code itself. It's just a language we use to describe how the system works. But if AI can just, if you're building something that's a chip, just let the AI program the chip. Don't go through source code. I think source code is going to become less and less important. It's going to be AI realm. People have no attention to reviewing it. You're looking at the outcome. If the outcome works and went through all the different gates that you required, it will be good. So application security will adapt to that. It will change. Things that are code-based would going to be internal to the agents or almost disappear. That's one big change that I believe is going to happen. Besides that, on the red side, I think that hackers and bad guys leverage AI to become more sophisticated. So I think the price of an error will be higher. So the automated cybersecurity with AI is going to make itself so if you are just releasing something that's vulnerable to the World Wide Web or anywhere, you will immediately get hacked because the sophistication of hacks would be so high, and application security will have to adapt to get into a situation where you basically can test it and have zero vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting, and I'd love if we could revisit this in a couple of years' time and see how things have moved. We're on to our final question, Liav, and it's always the same.
Yeah.
And I know it's kind of similar to the one that I asked about application security. But if you were, taking yourself back, a few years, or you were thinking about someone starting out in the industry today, what advice would you give them to be successful? What does someone need to be successful in cybersecurity? And yeah, what's worked for you? And yeah, what advice would you give?
I can focus on my journey and, go back 5 years and how we started Legit, but I really believe the world changed. And I think I really believe AI, I know it's a cliche, removed many of the bottlenecks and the blockers you have as an individual to just build things, even to create marketing and even to create product descriptions and user experience. Like, again, you need experts around you, but to get from 0 to 1, like for something that works, many of the bottlenecks are removed. So if you have a builder mindset and you want to get things done, go invest in learning how to use the tools today. Again, there's still not well-established infrastructure that you can just click and use. You have to hack your way through using tools, whether it's Claude Code or others. I think investing in this right now, we're in a period where there's a lot of opportunities, either to create businesses out of nowhere with a one-man show, or even in your own company to make a huge impact as an individual, but you have to build it yourself. You cannot rely on something out of the box that will just work. So I think if you invest in this, this is the time to go and learn for yourself how you leverage those tools today.
Brilliant. Yeah, fantastic. I think dive straight in is your advice. I think that's a great one. Thank you so much for joining us today, Liav. It was great having you on, learning more about Legit, knowing more about your perspectives and career so far. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.